is happening. However, the most severe effects may be prevented if greenhouse gas emissions are substantially reduced by 2030. Tracking climate change is an enormous task that will require actions from countries, companies, communities, and individuals.
Young people will be impacted the most by climate change. So, it's normal for them to be concerned about the future of our planet and want to do something about it. In a recent poll in the Washington Post, 70% of teenagers said climate change will harm their generation, and 1 in 4 teenagers have taken some sort of climate related action. Lately, youth all over the world are using their voices to raise awareness, lobby their local politicians, and spark changes in their countries, communities, schools, and at home.
Change happens when you take action. Our first step is to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions responsible for climate change. We should find more ways to use energy more efficiently. The good news is there are plenty of places to start.
Hello, and welcome to our final There Is No Planet B podcast, presented by the Valentine Keystone Lions. Thank you for taking the time to listen in as we partake in discussions surrounding climate change and how it is not only affecting our natural world, but the personal world of teens. My name is Jonathan, and joining us today, we have members of our Keystone group, Christian,
Yo.
Valerie,
Hello.
Norman,
Hey,
Rachel,
Hi.
Nigel,
Yep.
and joining us once again, Raul.
Yay.
Hey guys, glad to be
Finally.
here.
Special guest.
All right, so this is our final podcast out of 6 episodes. So congratulations, you all made it.
About time.
How
I
was
wasn't
it?
here for a couple of them, but that's my bad.
A lot of them.
Well, glad you're back. Glad you're back. So for this week, we are going to be, the topic is going to be preparing for change. So each week we've gone through separate discussions. In my personal opinion, episodes 4 and 5 were pretty good episodes. We discussed equity and climate change, and then we also discussed different ways that you all can change your daily habits to kind of minimize your carbon footprint with climate change. So this week we are going to talk about, lastly, preparing for change. So what does it look like to be prepared for climate change?
Having all of your seasonal clothes out.
That's just preparing for the season. It's not for climate
It
change.
has nothing to do with climate change.
Yes, it does.
I mean,
Because
it
climate
do,
change
but-
changes weather, which
Right,
we have seen in Chicago. And
right.
people are like, oh, I'll put my shorts on. And then they put their shorts on, and then it's like freezing the next 2 hours.
Right.
And then the next day it'll be like, oh, it's going to be freezing again. I'll wear my pants. And then it's sunny and 84. So I say seasonal clothes. Have them all out.
I'm thinking of it like a bigger picture. Well, not bigger picture, but bigger, like cities and like small towns. Probably like invest more in, like if you're like down in Texas, invest more in like better piping for the winter, or even like just snow plows, because they're getting snow now, so it's gonna be tough driving down the
Yeah.
road.
Like now that I have my own apartment, in the winter, like I have to check certain pipes, and in the summer I have to make sure that, like windows, because sometimes like cold air gets out and that affects my bill and stuff like that. So, like Val said, it is seasonal, but the thing is that climate change is changing the seasons. So winters are getting a lot colder, summers are getting a lot hotter, and it says here that we have until 2030. All of you are gonna be adults, when 2030 comes. So if you have your apartment or you have your own home, your winter might be a little longer, and if you don't budget your gas bill, you will be spending a lot of money on gas. So as an adult, that's where I can put my 2 cents. But yeah.
and I say we actually gotta figure out plans for all this, because if just compare New Orleans to Chicago, New Orleans have to plan a lot more than Chicago since they like underground level. And say if spring come, spring bring rain, and since they always have a chance of high floods, if they don't have no plan to figure out, okay, we want to block this area off with amount of sandbags this high, or bring more over this way. If you don't have that, you just let the water come in, or you just under prepare for what might happen. So I feel like you should have a plan, really.
I agree with Norman. I think we should have plans for everything. Because personally, when I am prepared, I feel so much better about what's going on. I feel like if I'm just thrown out into the open with no preparation, I'm so lost and confused. And I think we have to prepare and we have to plan, so that way when it actually hits us, we're not lost and confused in what's going on.
I agree with that because not a lot of people like take climate change serious, and when it do happen eventually, it's gonna hit a lot of people by surprise.
I have a question for Chris. Since you have family in Puerto Rico,
Right.
and they get hit with hurricanes, do you know of how they prepare during hurricane season?
Yeah, they stock up on food a lot. They get the power plant ready. They make sure to make sure everything is secure just in case something flies off. It's a lot of things that goes into it because it can affect some people not as much, but it's also depending on where you live at. It may be hard to get some resources or not move around too much. Like for the people that live closer to the beach, they gotta be careful, like for tsunamis and stuff like that. People that live up in the mountains, they gotta make sure I gotta go and get some food now rather than later, cause it goes by quick.
Okay, so I guess to go to Norman's point earlier about
Plans. Have a plan.
Oh,
I-
New Orleans.
New
the
Orleans?
New Orleans,
geography.
right? So it's like, what are people doing to prepare, right? And are these natural disasters actually prompting change, right? So in New Orleans, it took a hurricane to, break the dams and for the city to be affected, right? And then kind of construction to take place. And, there are still some parts of New Orleans that are currently being rebuilt, right? After years. Can we say the same about Texas? Are we to the point now where people have to physically be a part of a natural disaster that can be attributed to climate change in order to make change? Or are we still in that? How do we get people to prepare for change for those who are not directly affected by climate change but can start the process of change?
I don't really know, because it's one of those things where it's like that traumatic experience of going through that natural disaster for you and your family and whatever you have has to happen to you in order to know how serious it is, which is a shame. But I think it's one of those things where it's like if you hear from somebody, they'll just be like, "Nah, you're just kidding," or like, "You're not. That's not serious. That's not a thing," which is like a shame.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing about climate change is that it is downplayed a lot in like a lot of our
Society.
media, society. So unless it's like really gonna become number one priority, I don't think anything will change like in a short time.
And like for certain situations, not trying to take it into real perspective, like a do or die situation, we always prepare for the do, but we don't prepare for the die. Like Texas, they wasn't prepared for no snow. They prepared for overheating. That's the do. But when that cold hit, they ain't know how to adapt to that, because you ain't never hear about Texas really getting that cold. That's the die situation. So if you focus on one, the other might come get you. So that's why I feel like cities in general, don't prepare for certain things. They just prepare for what they know what might happen, and that's how that one thing lead to another.
Yeah. I I feel like, well, I agree with what you just said. How people don't necessarily know what's gonna hit them, and they don't think about it until it actually hits them, and that happens a lot with like climate change and snow, or like a lot of time. I mean, I personally, I don't think I've ever experienced an earthquake. I don't know what it feels like. I've never experienced a tornado, and to me, like growing up, I was always like, oh, tornadoes can't be that bad. Like they, I've never experienced one. They never hit me. And then hearing about like my mom, she always used to say that too, or one of my other family members used to say that too. And then they went somewhere and a tornado happened, and they're like, they were so underprepared, they didn't know what to do. They just ran into some building, and they're like, we don't know what we're doing. We're gonna need some help. And I feel like everybody should have that training to have an idea of what to do, like how they have schools. Um, my elementary school, we always had like tornado drill, but we never experienced a tornado at school. But it was just that preparation, so that way when it happens, you're not just caught like a deer in headlights. You don't know what to do, and you're just freaking out.
To be honest, I don't think those tornado drills be doing it justice. Like the earthquake. It's like, okay, I don't think my hand's gonna save my head if a break hit it.
Stove against the wall like a tornado.
Those
Really
earthquake ones where
cares.
you just had to go under the desk.
I don't
Those,
feel
Yeah.
that.
those. I was like, there's no way. What if the earth cracks open? You're gonna fall through.
Yeah, I always wondered, like, because when I was in grammar school, it was the start, or 9/11 happened, and everyone was scared about a bombing, right? And they said, yeah, my mom would say like, oh yeah, if something happens, just hide under your desk. And but the thing is, that's what it was taught, you know, that was what it was taught, and now I think that that plan has been visited, and it's like, hey, yes, you can hide under your desk, but the real effective thing is to get
Yeah.
underground, and there's certain things. So I think where cities and regions get in trouble is when they are, this is my plan, but it's never revisited, because yeah, I could prepare for a harsh winter, but what if it's negative 20 every day, and is my plan is it just a 1 day plan, or is it able to support the community for days, and with severe weather. So you can, when you see in the news like this happen, and you ask yourself like, hey, what was the city doing? It's because those plans weren't visited. It was like, okay, well, we have a plan, but you have to revisit these plans, because you can improve it, you can adjust to certain things, and that's where I see, like, when I see in the news like, hey, the city wasn't prepared, it's because yeah, they weren't prepared, and they weren't like they weren't they were just satisfied with what they had, and that never it's about improvement.
I completely understand what you're talking about, how they're like looking more into the plans that they already have, because even now at school, like ever since I was like till like 6th grade, they were like, oh yeah, this is what you have to do during a lockdown drill or a tornado drill. But now they started saying like, just so you know, it's not gonna necessarily be effective, and there's many outcomes that could happen, but this is just the precaution we're taking right now to keep you safe. So I think they definitely started fact checking it, you could say, because a lot of the times that's not what's going to help you. It's just
So, are there any specific impacts that are expected for the city of Chicago with climate change?
Yes.
Like what?
Because based on like the land itself, if one area gets hit more than the other, let's say the electricity bill, so like for one house may be significantly higher than what it usually was, or like the heat bill because it's too cold to this one area. So like the prices of what you usually may pay may go up. So I feel like that might have changed a lot of people, like say who are struggling, who just can't do this, can't do that, and barely living by. So if you trying to raise it up all at once, they might not be ready for it, and they might suffer even more.
Okay, so prices are definitely going to go up. Anything else? Do you think? Does anyone
Food,
food?
like basic essentials, actually, because when people get scared, they usually buy everything up and
Toilet paper.
leaves nothing to anyone else.
Well, what about the pipeline, right? Kind of going a little bit
Infrastructure.
off track, right? Infrastructure. The pipeline on the East Coast got shut down, right? What happened? People started hoarding, right? Gas. Panic kind of sets in. So definitely living in a big city, right? If something were to go down, again, we saw that with the great toilet paper shortage of 2021, right? It was kind of hard to find toilet paper anywhere. But kind of bringing it back to climate change, think about, so we talked about food, talked about, bills, electricity, community. What about like parks, right?
Yeah.
The parks you guys go to now.
I think I think in a couple of years we'll see if the city doesn't take care of it. I think we'll see the end of Lakeshore Drive, and beaches. You if you go down the Lakeshore Drive, a lot of the beaches they're not as big as they used to be. The water is rising, and the park that me and John used to go to when we were kids, Cal Park. One of the beaches is non-existent anymore, and that was one of the big beaches of the city. So, yeah, now that I'm planning summer camp and stuff, like I look at the beaches and I see, hey, is this beach even big enough? Compared from one year to another, the beaches are getting smaller, and you can visibly see that. Yeah, so the city it's something that the city really does have to plan for is what are we gonna do to save our beaches? What's our plan?
I mean, I remember every year on summer camp going like back to the same beach, and and it's just a year difference, and you could kind of see it's just like slow. It would be slowly getting smaller, and then it wasn't so slow anymore, getting smaller, and then I went back before COVID started with my family, and I was like, I feel like it used to be so much bigger. Like there's like no sand anymore sometimes, and it's just weird.
That beach with my little legs, that said otherwise. That beach was
Yeah,
big.
it felt so big, and now it's just not.
Yeah, I mean things that we don't take for granted now, right? May not be there in the future, couple years. If you look now, there is construction to kind of save the lake. I guess they're putting like rocks and they're putting like these sand barriers, but is that going to be enough, right? Because the water is rising pretty fast, and if you do drive or you bike on Lakeshore Drive on a windy day, you're getting a wave to the face.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy in the last couple of years how much has changed. And I don't know, Nigel, I know you're on the lakefront a little bit or
A
more
lot of it.
often. Have you noticed things?
I don't even take the walking part. I only stay on a bike trail these days because it's just so close to the water, and like some of the parts is just straight up just so wet where you shouldn't ride your bike on it. You just straight up fall off, and I don't want to lose a bike to a lake. I don't want to take that ill.
You want to take that risk?
So
And it's crazy because it's a lake. It's not even like an ocean. Like a lake is rising.
Yeah, we always hear about the ocean levels are rising, but we never think about Lake Michigan as being part of that. Yeah, I agree with your statement.
So who are the people in our community that are the most vulnerable, and how can we help them?
I would say the elderly because they're already used to their type of life, like what they live, and like they're used to that. And with COVID hitting, climate change, like they have to like adapt to certain things quickly. It's not like, okay, let me ease you into this. No, and it might affect them one way or another, and we might not think it, but it can affect them in a way.
Yeah, definitely, right? A lot of seniors are living on fixed incomes, right? Social Security, maybe their 401ks, whatever, right? So if, going back to Norman's point about raising higher energy bills, right? If summers are longer and hotter, right, maybe, these elderly folks do not have the means to pay for these bills, right? Maybe they don't turn on the air conditioning for one of those days. Well, heat does affect the elderly more than it does, us, right? We can kind of tolerate it, but every year we hear in the news, unfortunately, that there's these wellness checks, and people in our communities don't make it, right? Because the heat is just too overbearing. And the same can be said about the cold, right? Longer winters, more heat costs are going up, air conditioning. So Chris, the elderly people are a part of our community that's going to be affected. Anybody else?
I also think it's because of their health issues. Because you know how we said about stocking up and stuff like that. There's plenty of things that they could probably do around the house, but because of health issues, they're not as accessible for them as they should be. So, as a solution to that, it would be like we would go out and have like service projects and stuff to help them and to help others, help those on the streets, and just like be that youthful generation that can help out another.
Yeah, the first people that come to my mind are the homeless, of course. Yeah, because you see a homeless person, and for me, the first thing that comes to my mind is, where do you stay at night? You know, and usually we know the answer is like under viaducts, parks, where they're exposed to the environment. A couple years ago we had extreme, really an extreme like cold, and there was, the usual spots where, the homeless were, staying. That's where, unfortunately, that's where they were discovering bodies, So for me, the first people that I think about is the homeless, because they are literally exposed. They're exposed,
Yeah.
unless they have a shelter or somewhere to go. It's very difficult, especially with these extreme cold days, hot days. So yeah.
Honestly, for me, it's kind of the same, homeless, but also I really think about the elderly a lot too. But especially with the homeless now, is they're starting to put those spikes under viaducts and stuff, and they can't even go under there. Like, they're in the middle of the street, just like, well, not in the middle of the street, but you know what I mean. Like,
Yeah.
even more out in the open than just under a viaduct, and they literally have nowhere to go. At least under a viaduct, you have shade, at least. Not even that great. And then if you even combine the elderly and the homeless, there's so many elderly homeless people I see all the time, and it just, I just think about like their families. Like, how could a family do that? And one time, I don't know if Val remembers, but me and a couple of friends were walking, and we just had a bag of chips, and we were like, yeah, we're not gonna eat this, so we're gonna give it to the guy. And he said, oh, my grandkids are gonna love these. And we're like, it's for you. You don't have to, give it to your grandkids. I mean, it's up to you. It's your food now, and it's just crazy to think that even in people who are going through all this still think about their family, and they're out in the open. And that really connects back to climate change, because kind of far stretch, but also, if you think about it, there's probably a lot of people out there who, sorry, I kind of lost track. I'll just get back to what I was going to say. Someone else. Go ahead. I forgot what I was going to say.
No, I get what you're saying.
People living check by check. Like, if something happened to them, like an emergency that costs like $500, they can easily become homeless off of that. So I think it can affect everybody, like from just basic people all the way down, because they can't really afford to extra expenses that they have no control over. So
Nigel just reminded me what I was going to say. So I was going to say how the elderly people are already spending so much money on their medication and hospital bills. Like, they're their body part, well, like their
Their health.
joints or whatever, they can no longer do what us youth or us younger people can do. So they're already spending so much money on that I feel like the last thing they would really care about is the weather. And like, well, I feel like I'd be like, oh, this is going to affect my health even more. But then when you're actually in the situation where it's affecting your health, there's that point nothing you can do. You already paid your medical bills. You can't just go, depending on how much money you have, some people can't just go paying all these other bills. So it's really difficult. And then I was also going to say one summer I was driving and, well, I wasn't driving, whatever. And this man, he probably looked like he was like 60 or 70 in his car, and he was driving, and then he just passes out because it was so hot. And then we called the police, and then the police were like, he has no air conditioning in his car. He had his windows couldn't roll all the way down, so they were half rolled down, and he just passed out. And there were so many other cars behind, and they were like, I think one car rear-ended him because it was kind of fast, but they didn't even care that their car was damaged. They were just worried about this guy. And then I don't really know, but my aunt said that because she was keeping up on it, that the people helped buy him a new car, which was kind of nice, but whatever.
Yep.
So yeah, so just to kind of wrap things up, I think maybe everyone can agree or disagree with me that we're in a position to be the change that we want to see, right? Me and Ro a little older than you guys, but right now I think the change falls on all of us, right? The doomsday clock is slowly, approaching 12 o'clock. I don't know how long it's going to be, but for decades it was always, well, we'll just push it off to the next generation. We'll push it off to the next generation. Well, as we can see, things are really starting to change, and they're becoming more and more frequent. So over these past 6 episodes, we've talked about various topics, and one of the things that we always circle around to is speaking for those who are kind of forgotten, who kind of cannot make change themselves, the younger people in our community, the older people in our community, the homeless people. Maybe you guys become politicians, maybe you don't, but maybe you guys become activists. But there are certain things that you can do amongst your family members, amongst your peers, to kind of start that change going, to start going.
Yeah, you got we have to remember the power of the dollar. So when you have, money, or even, it doesn't always have to be about money, but utilize your money to promote and help those programs that are helping the community. If it's a $20 donation, or you and your friends, instead of going to the movies, hey, let's just give this money to this organization that's helping feed the homeless, or helping helping people with their bills. It's funding those programs that are helping the community right now. There's programs that help with your heating, electric. If in the summer they will give you fans, and it's just really understanding what you can do, and not just I'm gonna go to this place and help. Is, hey, I got $20, I want to donate to your organization, or I'm gonna promote your organization on my social media. You guys have a voice, and so on your social media, and it's a way for you guys to use it to promote positivity in your community.
That ties in with consumer democracy. Because using your money to spend it in a place where it needs it the most instead of on yourself just shows that there's a problem and you're going to help solve it, which will, if everybody keeps on going and everybody has an impact, it'll get bigger and bigger, and finally our politicians will see it.
Yeah. Talk to your politicians about hey, how can we help fund these programs? You know, a lot of you can actually get access to your local politicians. You know, they have offices, they have emails, they have phone numbers that you can call. You know, if you know there's enough voices requesting something, you guys can make a change.
And there are a lot of people your age who are actively speaking out that have not done so before. So if you feel the fire to join a cause, there's plenty of people around you who are out there making change. I want to thank everyone for listening, and I want to thank Keystone for actually having these discussions. This wasn't an easy topic, nor is it I would say, popular topic, right? But it is a discussion that needs to be had. Just going for the future, not only for my generation, but for your generation. So thank you very much, Keystone.
Woo! Keystone
Keystone
out.
out.